Vienna Forum, Ernest Young of Georgia, International Center for Geopolitical Studies, Elias State University, Georgian Foundation for Strategic and International Studies, Caucasus Institute for Peace, Democracy and Development, Caucasus International Center for Geopolitical Studies, Caucasus Institute Yerevan, and Civilitas Foundation of Yerevan for making this a very important event possible. I would like to address a topic which has very timely nature, and it addresses the changes which are affecting the region in view of the lifting of possibility of lifting sanctions over Iran, and the possibilities of new trade transportation corridors which are being implemented as we speak. So I titled my talk "Geopolitical Georgia's Future Will Be Determined by its Geopolitics." Despite its small size of 27,000 square miles and population of only 3.7 million of people, Georgia is not only an important transit country for the hydrocarbons of the Caspian, including the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan oil pipeline and Baku-Tbilisi-Erzurum, the South Caucasus gas pipeline, and a new railroad link which is being built, Baku-Tbilisi cars. It is also a major hub for maritime shipping from its long littoral. Transport and shipping amounts for 17.2% of its annual GDP. Currently, Georgia is in possession of two major seaports, Batumi and Poti, and one seaport which is currently under occupation in Abkhazia. I'm talking about Sukhumi. Foreign policy of Georgia, as I just said, is going to be directly affected by the lifting of sanctions, because Georgia foresees itself as a major corridor for Iran-European trade, and it's going to benefit immensely from this new breakthrough in regional geopolitics. However, I would like to focus on other aspects of geopolitics, namely geo-economics. Firstly, I would like to define what it is. Geo-economics may be defined in two different ways: as the relationship between economic policy and changes in national power, and geopolitics, in other words, the geopolitical consequences of economic phenomena, or as the economic consequences of trends in geopolitics and national power. Both the notions of trade follows the flag, that the projection of national power has economic consequences, and that the flag follows the trade, that there are geopolitical consequences of essentially economic phenomena, point to the subject matter of geoeconomics. Either way, the intellectual roots of geoeconomics are embedded in 17th century European, largely French mercantilism. The military pursuit of markets, resources, and bullion intended to allow a country to export more and import less, and to buy cheap and sell dear, preceded the advent of modern economics based on ideas of free trade and laissez-faire. While the 19th century was dominated by these classical economic ideas, mercantilism was never definitively buried and has repeatedly raised its head. In interwar Europe, for example, and most recently in China, we can see the clear examples of this phenomena. In the 1980s, the rise of Japan elicited mercantilist responses from Europe and the United States, based on fears that Japan itself was rising on back of mercantilism. Today, economic crises in Europe and North America are once again reviving latent mercantilism, with many accusing Germany and the United States of pursuing a mercantilist agenda. In the Cold War era, 1950 to 1990, international economics and politics were marked by a conflict between the ideas of free trade and liberal democracy on the one hand, and those of statism and authoritarianism on the other. With a few countries experimenting with a mixture of the two, India, for example, mixed liberal democracy with state capitalism, while Asian tigers, Hong Kong, Singapore, South Korea, and Taiwan, and many Latin American countries combined free enterprise with military or one-party rule. The dominant paradigm of the Cold War, however, left politics in command, meaning that geopolitics was driven by ideological rather than purely economic factors. It is therefore no coincidence that the three most important ideas defining contemporary geoeconomics were all articulated around the end of the Cold War, when a new era of international economics rivalry was being inaugurated. Now I would like to direct our attention to the possibility of a very major infrastructural project which will change dramatically the significance of Georgia as a gateway, one of the most important gateways of the Black Sea littoral. I'm talking about the Anaklia project. First, I would like to spend a few moments talking about the history of this idea. It was Georgian international businessman Timur Karchava who pioneered this idea of constructing a major seaport in Anaklia on the northern Georgian coast in autumn of 2009. The ex-president of Georgia, Mikhail Saakashvili, promulgated the Lazika project in his last presidential term. President Saakashvili announced plan about constructing of this model city in December of 2011, and the Georgian government is moving ahead with its implementation, and it's going to be a major multifunctional project. At the inauguration ceremony in December of 2011, President Saakashvili stated that this will be the sea economic and commercial center in western Georgia. This project to be completed within 10 years in this strategic location highlighted the new geopolitical orientation of Georgia state, namely instead of seeking security in its small land mass, but rather turning to the sea and becoming a major regional sea power. Saakashvili envisioned Georgia as a liberal trading nation, open to international sea trade. This future city has also important geostrategic dimension in view of a new soft power initiative undertaken by Georgian government, directed at the nations of the North Caucasus. On June 30th, 2012, the Georgian parliament granted the special status to the future port city of Lazika. It's the city of Lazika, which is being built on the Black Sea coast of Georgia, next to the border with self-proclaimed Republic of Abkhazia, is slotted to accommodate population of 500,000 and to become a major commercial and tourist center. In 2012, the Georgian parliament granted the special status to the future port city of Lazika. The city of Lazika, which has been this project has been renamed, and currently it's called the Anaklia project. And the current government led by the Georgian Dream Coalition is continuing this project, even though the location has been slightly changed, but the main ideas and main strategic thinking has a continuity with the previous government. What's important is that United States obviously is in a competition with such a rising power as China. And recently China made tremendous efforts in order to clinch a deal and to become a major part of this construction project, of the seaport construction project in Anaklia. And until February of this year, it seemed that China will be the dominant and is to gain most economic status on Georgian seacoast as major funder of this project. However, the Chinese Georgian consortium has been undone due to the decision of the Georgian government. And this has obviously clear geopolitical implication, because back in 2015, during the during the session of U.S. Georgia Economic and Trade Energy Working Group in Washington, the following statement was made: U.S. Georgia Strategic Partnership Commission met in Washington on May 4th, 2015. The Economic Working Group reaffirmed the strong bilateral relationship between the United States and Georgia. The United States congratulated Georgia for its significant progress in implementing reforms required by the association agreement with the European Union, noting that this demonstrated Georgia's continued achievements in realizing its Euro-Atlantic integration goals. The United States also expressed continuous readiness to assist Georgia as it implements association agreement and its deep, comprehensive free trade area. As I mentioned, China suffered a major economic and geopolitical blow on February 15 of 2016 when the consortium earlier, which has been announced by the Georgian government as the preferred candidate, Georgia made a very quick but very decisive move, and it nominated an American company to be the major player in the nuclear project. Ironically, the announcement came on Chinese New Year, and in a mail statement, Deputy Economic Minister Irma Kaftaradze did not offer a detailed explanation about the tender choice. In selecting companies for bidding, the government commission was guided by financial, technical, economic, and legal criteria to identify the best bidder. But it would be very highly unlikely that such a major geopolitical and political decision was made purely on economic grounds. Touted as a game changer for Georgia economy, the $2.5 billion and 988-acre nuclear port facility, which will stretch 2.5 kilometers along the coast, will be able to accommodate vessels that are too large to call at Georgia existing Black Sea ports at Poti and Batumi. Currently, such ships must transfer Georgia-bound cargo to feeder ships, mostly in Istanbul. Well, I would like just to conclude that it sounds that the economic future of Georgia is very closely tied to the West and to the United States. Despite the pressure from Russia and possibly from China, which was thinking that it locked this geopolitical project. I'm talking about Anaklia, the seaport project. My conclusion is that Georgia's future is tightly and neatly aligned with the Western interests, and such trade routes with Iran will always be affected as just one of the secondary goals, while the major goals of the economic politics of Georgia in the foreseeable future will be determined by its Western vocation. Thank you so much, and I hope the best to this conference.